Have you ever stopped to think about what it really takes for a leader to, well, not just survive, but actually thrive when pretty much everything is stacked against them? When they're dismissed, underestimated, maybe even expected to just fail.
Yeah, it's a fascinating question, and today we're diving deep into a monarch who did exactly that, defied all the odds.
Here we are. We're talking about Queen Elizabeth I of England. People often call her the red-haired titan of Tudor England. Right?
That's her. And her story, it's just this incredible masterclass in turning perceived weaknesses, things people held against her, into her greatest strengths.
Totally. And for this deep dive, we're pulling from some really insightful material, the transcript of the YouTube video, Why Elizabeth III Was a Badass Queen, and more from the Sleepless Historian channel.
A great source for this topic.
Definitely. So our mission today really is to unpack how Elizabeth managed to navigate, a truly brutal upbringing, a political landscape that was just treacherous.
Absolutely lethal sometimes.
Right. And how she ultimately transformed England, creating this unforgettable legacy, both personal and political. We want to explore her strategic genius, her amazing mastery of image.
Which was groundbreaking.
Yeah, and the surprising ways she basically bent a world that was built to deny her power.
It's a story of survival, definitely, but also just incredible cunning and an unyielding spirit, real defiance.
So Elizabeth Tudor's life, it certainly didn't start with a lullaby, did it? It started with an execution.
Yeah, pretty stark. Born in 1533, daughter of Anne Boleyn and Henry VIII, and that initial privilege, it just vanished almost overnight.
Because her mother, Anne Boleyn, was executed when Elizabeth was only, 2 years old?
Just 2. On charges of adultery, treason. Though, many historians point out it might have just been that Henry got bored or needed a male heir and couldn't provide.
Right, and then Parliament steps in and declares Elizabeth illegitimate.
Exactly. Demoted from princess to basically a political inconvenience overnight.
Wow. Can you imagine? A toddler suddenly stripped of everything, and she's immediately removed from court, right? Sent away.
Swiftly removed. Sent to the countryside, her household cut right down, allowance slashed, pretty much politely ignored for years. She became, as the source puts it, just that red-haired kid with the beheaded mom.
That's brutal. Most people, you'd think, facing that would end up bitter, anxious.
Or maybe writing moody poetry, yeah. But Elizabeth, she broke the mold. Somehow she understood that knowledge was her way forward, her armor.
So she just threw herself into studying.
Absolutely. Latin, Greek, French, philosophy, theology, the source quips, basically everything except how to trust people. Fluent in 5 languages, but emotionally fluent in none.
That's telling. And wasn't she really young when she adopted her personal motto?
Just 9 years old. Video intessio.
I see and say nothing.
Yeah. Which, it sounds pretty bleak for a 3rd grader, doesn't it? But yeah. Incredibly smart. She was already playing the long game, quietly watching everyone, maybe storing it all up for, a kind of intellectual revenge down the line.
And watching Henry's wives must have been an education in itself.
Oh, absolutely. That revolving door. She learned 2 crucial lessons. 1, don't get attached. And 2, never, ever rely on a man with a scepter and clearly unresolved trauma.
Huh. Good advice. So this fostered a kind of detachment.
A profound emotional detachment. It became her superpower, really. She weaponized observation in a way most kids weaponize sarcasm.
So her childhood wasn't glittering balls and destiny. It was more like...
More like medieval Hunger Games, yeah. But with extra Latin and serious emotional damage, raised with just enough dignity to avoid total scandal, but enough neglect to know she wasn't really wanted.
And this forced her to become a master of saying nothing, basically.
The fine art of the non-committal nod, appearing devout to Protestants, solemn to Catholics, never showing her true hand.
That combination, the trauma, the intense education, it really forged someone unique, didn't it?
Deeply calculating, exceptionally self-protective, ready for what came next.
Okay, so after all that instability, there was a brief moment that seemed a bit better, right? With Catherine Parr.
Yes, Henry VIII's 6th wife. Catherine Parr actually offered Elizabeth some genuine maternal affection, and she really supported her education, which was huge.
A bit of stability, finally.
For a moment. But then, things took another perilous turn. After Henry died, Catherine married Thomas Seymour.
Ah, Seymour. Not a great figure in this story.
Not at all. The source describes him as approximately 50% ambition and 50% walking HR violation. He got, let's say, a little too familiar with teenage Elizabeth.
What exactly happened?
Well, accounts describe him waiting her up, tickling her, chasing her around, really inappropriate behavior, especially given the power dynamic.
Wow. That sounds incredibly uncomfortable and dangerous. Like you said, a total HR violation, even by today's standards, let alone back then.
Exactly. The scandal was eventually hushed up, but Elizabeth left Catherine's household. Miraculously, her reputation stayed intact, but she learned another hard lesson.
If it was.
Trust no one, especially men who smile too much.
Right. So this incident, unsettling as it was, just reinforced that need for self-preservation.
Absolutely. Cemented that deep mistrust. It hammered home that even people supposed to protect her could be a threat. Hardened her resolve, made her even more wary, more independent.
Okay, fast forward a few years to 1554. Things get even more intense. She gets an unexpected invitation from her half-sister, Queen Mary I.
Invitation is putting it mildly. Mary was dealing with Wyatt's rebellion, a Protestant uprising, and Elizabeth's name kept accidentally popping up among the rebels. Convenient.
So Mary suspects her.
Deeply. The result, Elizabeth gets hauled off to the Tower of London.
Oh, wow. Not just anywhere, the Tower.
And forced to enter through Traitor's Gate, no less. On a miserable rainy day. Talk about a family reunion from hell.
But this is where her steel really shows, isn't it? She doesn't crumble.
Not at all. It's incredible. Instead of panicking, she calmly states she's innocent and apparently asked politely but firmly not to die. She even carved her name into the wall, apparently.
Huh. Amazing. She just refused to be broken.
Totally. Stayed composed. Despite the damp rooms, the fear, the attempts to scare her into confessing, no screaming, no sobbing, no dramatic fainting, which, the source points out was kind of expected from noblewomen then.
So Mary couldn't actually pin anything on her.
Couldn't find enough solid evidence. So after a couple of months, Elizabeth was released. Still under house arrest, mind you, but out of the Tower.
So, okay, this terrifying experience, it could have broken her. How did it end up making her stronger instead?
Well, it wasn't a breaking point. It was more like a sharpening point. It honed her. She walked out of there quieter, definitely more calculating. You almost imagine her leaving with a mental checklist, people who tried me will handle later.
Huh, right.
The whole ordeal just solidified her resolve. Taught her some key lessons, too. Trust no family member who runs a monarchy.
Good rule of thumb.
Never assume your innocence will automatically save you. And maybe always keep a change of dry clothes handy, just in case the Tower is on your weekend plans.
Practical advice. So when Queen Mary dies childless in 1558, England's in a pretty rough state, right?
Oh, absolutely. Europe was basically expecting chaos. England was broke, anxious, religiously divided, surrounded by enemies. The source humorously called it like a Tudor group chat gone very wrong.
But beneath the humor, it was serious. Risk of civil war, Catholic enemies waiting to pounce.
Precisely. And Elizabeth, well, she wasn't the obvious choice for everyone. A lot of people still remembered her as, the illegitimate daughter, the one who'd been in the Tower.
The redhead with the Tower record.
Exactly. But frankly, there weren't many other options left by then. And Elizabeth, she didn't hang around waiting for an invitation. She seized the moment, rode into London.
And the reaction.
Cheers. Which sounded a lot like sheer national relief, probably. A huge collective sigh.
Her coronation, though, wasn't exactly smooth sailing either. January 1559.
Logistical nightmare, frozen streets, chaos. But Elizabeth didn't seem to care. She stood there, dressed in this amazing gown of gold and white, basically screaming, "Surprise, I live."
And she set the tone immediately. No apologies.
Right from day one.
Right.
Made it crystal clear this wasn't going to be a reign of apologies. She wasn't rolling over for the Catholic Church. She wasn't marrying just to keep Spain happy. And she definitely wasn't letting her council run the show.
That's a powerful start.
It really set the precedent for her entire reign. Independent, strategic, showed she understood power and intended to wield it herself. No puppet queen here.
And her speech at the time.
Classic Elizabeth. Made the old guard, especially the bishops, very uncomfortable. Promised justice, stability, and unity, but managed to say absolutely nothing concrete about her religion, her marriage plans, any actual policies.
Political vagueness elevated to an art form.
With a crown on top.
Yeah.
And it worked. By the end of that coronation day, everyone knew England didn't just have a new queen. It had a leader who knew exactly what she was doing.
So she's queen. What's the first big pressure point? Marriage, right?
Instantly. The moment she's on the throne, marriage offers just flood in. Like the source says, pigeons to a bread fight. France, Spain, Sweden, her own courtiers. Everyone wants a piece of the action.
Because in the 16th century, a woman ruling alone, That was radical.
It wasn't just unusual. For many, it was terrifying. What if she had her own ideas? What if you didn't just hand over control to, some duke with a beard? The whole concept was destabilizing to the established order.
But Elizabeth had a plan, or rather, a non-plan.
Her secret weapon. She had absolutely zero intention of marrying anyone. She knew instinctively the second she said, "I do," she'd become queen consort of someone instead of the Queen of England.
And that wasn't happening.
Not a chance. So she played the long game, kept everyone guessing publicly while privately shutting everyone down. She flirted with the idea of marriage, the source says, like some people flirt with buying a treadmill. Lots of thought, no actual commitment.
Huh. That's brilliant. And this led to the whole Virgin Queen persona.
One of the most genius political identities ever crafted. It gave her the perfect excuse, wholly, devoted to her country to stay single, all while projecting strength and national unity.
She actually said the country was her spouse.
She did, which is a very poetic way of saying, look, I'm way too busy running England to deal with a husband right now.
So by refusing to marry, she kept all these European powers guessing.
Constantly on edge. It was just a masterclass in power hoarding. Okay, let's unpack this. How did avoiding what was literally expected of every queen become her biggest political win?
It seems counterintuitive.
Right. But it worked on multiple levels. Firstly, it preserved her own authority, no king consort to challenge her or try to rule through her. But secondly, it gave her enormous diplomatic flexibility. She could dangle the possibility of marriage as a bargaining chip with different countries. Keep potential allies hopeful, potential enemies off balance. Spain thinks maybe they'll get an alliance. France hopes for the same. She could play them off against each other without ever actually committing England to anything. It centralized all the power, all the potential right around her. Genius, really.
Okay, so throne secured, marriage dodged.
Mm-hmm.
Now she has to actually manage her court.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds like a challenge in itself.
Oh, definitely. The source calls it a glittering nest of vipers and lace collars.
Nice.
And her council, filled with these powerful men who, frankly, hadn't quite adjusted to taking orders from someone, without a beard.
But she had an advantage, didn't she? All those years of watching.
Exactly. A lifetime observing powerful people screw up. Now it was her turn not to make those same mistakes.
So how did she run the court? It sounds like managing chaos.
It was like playing chess blindfolded on a moving ship during a storm, except the queen could actually see the whole board. Her favorite tactic, keep everyone guessing. Always.
How did she do that?
Granted titles really slowly, gave out rewards even more rarely, and trust. Pretty much never fully given.
What about her famous perhaps?
Yes. Her chief advisor, William Cecil, apparently spent decades trying to figure out her perhaps, which basically always meant no.
So why not just say no?
Because saying no closes doors. Elizabeth preferred to leave them just slightly ajar, let people hang on to hope, keep them striving, keep them dependent on her favor. It kept them tripping over their own ambitions, trying to please her.
So decisions took forever.
Weeks, sometimes months. Not because she couldn't decide, but because every minute they spent waiting, uncertain, made them more reliant on her.
And flattery. Was that the way to get ahead?
It was the currency, for sure.
Yeah.
But you had to be careful. One compliment too far, too obvious, and she'd apparently roast you in front of everyone. Brutal. Nobody ever really knew where they stood or what she was truly thinking.
So she didn't just occupy the throne, she performed it.
Absolutely. She performed the throne, eyes always watching, smile always calculated, power always close, but never, ever fully shared. It was a constant, meticulous performance.
That control extends to her image too, right? Her clothes, her look.
Yeah.
It wasn't just fashion.
Not at all. Elizabeth didn't just rule England, she dressed the part. So aggressively, the source jokes, her wardrobe deserved its own diplomatic core.
Huh. Political armor.
Exactly. Gowns stitched with intent, basically screaming, I am the state and I am not here for your nonsense. It was power dressing on an epic scale.
And the famous white makeup, the wigs.
All part of crafting that myth. The white lead makeup gave her this ghostly, almost divine look, timeless, and the wigs towering, elaborate, sometimes weaponizable, as the source puts it, reinforced that image of eternal youth, unwavering strength.
Even though the lead makeup was, poisonous.
Yeah, never mind the lead poisoning. Looking immortal was apparently worth migraines. It was psychological warfare through fashion.
How so? What did the colors mean?
When she wore white, it wasn't just purity, it signified invincibility. Black wasn't just mourning, it was menace. The colors, the jewels, everything was chosen for political effect, not just aesthetics.
And she made sure nobody else could copy her look. those sumptuary laws.
Right, laws dictating who could wear what based on social rank. It was her way of saying, you can try to look fancy, but you will never look like me. Maintaining that unique, untouchable image.
Even controlling her portraits, like Elizabethan Photoshop.
Pretty much an official mask of youth. Painters basically had a template they had to stick to, so she always looked like she hadn't aged since, say, 1563. Tight control over every aspect of her image.
It's just fascinating how deeply she understood that image was power.
Yeah.
How did manipulating her appearance like that actually translate into real political strength?
Well, it acted as a massive deterrent. Who would dare challenge this almost otherworldly figure? It allowed her to operate so effectively in a world dominated by men, by making herself seem timeless, almost divine, beyond normal human frailties.
And beyond gender expectations.
Exactly. She cultivated this aura of invincibility that commanded respect, maybe even fear, and certainly discouraged plots and rebellion. That carefully built public image was a cornerstone of her actual power.
So beyond the image, she was also incredibly hands-on with the actual running of the kingdom, no delegation.
Oh, completely hands-on. The source compares her to a CEO with trust issues and a suspicious amount of free time.
Huh. I like that.
She reviewed letters, edited speeches, weighed in on military plans, approved portraits, apparently even down to the font size on official proclamations, micromanaged everything.
What was it like working for her? Sounds intense.
Constant state of, let's say, polite panic. She wasn't necessarily cruel, but relentless, demanding. Courtiers apparently lived in fear of her glares.
And she famously stonewalled Parliament on the marriage question for decades.
25 years, yeah. Basically turned ghosting into domestic policy.
Wow. And she really valued the written word.
Loved letters, read them, revised them, sometimes rewrote them entirely. When she finally put pen to paper herself, her words apparently hit harder than a cavalry charge.
And she had a spy network, too. This wasn't just about paperwork.
Absolutely. Francis Walsingham, her spy master, ran a kind of proto-MI6, incredibly efficient at sniffing out plots, intercepting mail, cracking codes, essential for her security.
So why all this control? Just trust issues?
Fundamentally, yes. She didn't trust her nobles, didn't trust foreign powers, didn't really trust, well, anyone, based on her early life, so she kept it all close.
Running the whole show herself.
Pretty much, like a one-woman HR department, war office, branding agency, and crisis hotline all rolled into one.
That level of deep involvement, it really speaks to how she learned to survive early on, doesn't it? No power could slip away.
Exactly. It was statecraft born from profound vulnerability and a lifetime of betrayal. She wasn't going to let anyone else drop the ball.
Okay, let's talk about the Spanish Armada. 1588. Big moment.
Huge moment. Philip II of Spain basically thought England would be an easy win. He had the massive navy, the gold.
And England had
fewer ships, less money, and a queen who still hadn't married or named an heir. On paper, it looked bad for England.
But Elizabeth didn't panic.
Not Elizabeth. As the Armada looms, she marches straight to Tilbury where her troops are gathered. And her outfit, iconic.
The white dress and the breastplate.
White velvet dress, breastplate over it, looking, as the source memorably puts it, like a war goddess who moonlights as a wedding cake.
Huh. Love that. And then the speech.
One of the most famous speeches ever. Telling her army, I know I have the body of a weak and feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king.
Which basically meant...
yeah, I'm female, I'm unmarried, maybe I look small to you, but mess with my coast and I will absolutely wreck you.
And morale just shot up.
Through the roof. And then the battle itself. It wasn't just English skill, was it? A combination. The smaller, faster English ships harassed the huge Spanish galleons, fire ships caused chaos, and then the weather played a massive part.
The Protestant win.
As the English gleefully called it. A huge storm scattered the Armada, divine intervention, or just lucky weather, it saved England.
Elizabeth seized on that victory. Didn't just let it be a military event.
Oh, she turned it into a massive branding campaign. Medals struck, paintings commissioned. The message was unavoidable. God is clearly on England's side now. God is English.
So that Tilbury speech is iconic, yeah. But the way she used the victory afterwards was maybe even more important.
Absolutely. It wasn't just winning the battle, it was winning the narrative. It cemented her image as this divinely favored ruler, England's protector, massively boosted her authority at home and her standing abroad. It was the ultimate validation of her rule.
So we keep coming back to things she didn't do. Didn't marry. And she didn't name an heir either.
Nope. The one thing monarchs were absolutely supposed to do, provide an heir for stability, she just skipped it for her entire 44-year reign.
And when people asked?
Her answer was basically, you'll find out when I do.
Yeah.
Kept everyone completely in the dark.
Was that strategic? Or just avoiding a difficult decision?
Yeah.
Because it seems risky.
Oh, it was absolutely strategic. Think about it. Naming an heir would immediately create a rival power center. Someone for discontented nobles to rally around, someone waiting for her to die.
Like handing them an invitation to plot her funeral, as the source says.
Exactly. And after her own traumatic youth, dealing with succession plots and sisters vying for the throne, she wanted none of that.
So she just let people speculate.
Yeah.
Between Mary, Queen of Scots, James of Scotland.
Kept them all dangling. Mary, of course, eventually posed too much of a threat and was executed. But James of Scotland remained a likely candidate, yet she never officially confirmed it. She even snapped at Parliament once, telling them they had no business asking about her successor unless they were planning to kill her.
Wow. Direct. So this deliberate vagueness, this ambiguity, it was a control mechanism.
A powerful one. It kept all eyes, all loyalty, all hopes focused squarely on her. Prevented rivals from gaining traction around a designated successor. It ensured she remained the undisputed center of power right until her last breath. Definitely strategic brilliance, not avoidance.
While she's busy doing all this political maneuvering, dodging marriage, managing spies, England itself is changing culturally, isn't it? The Elizabethan Golden Age.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. Almost accidentally, it seems. She presides over this huge cultural boom.
Shakespeare being the biggest name, obviously.
Right. William Shakespeare wrote most of his iconic plays during her reign, and Elizabeth herself apparently loved the theater, patronized acting companies, went to performances, even when some of her stuffier advisors complained about, too many racy jokes.
Too many double entendres. But she saw value in it beyond just entertainment.
Definitely. She saw art as soft power. The source makes a great point. Theater was the Netflix of the 16th century. If people were watching a play, they weren't rioting. And if the play happened to show a strong, clever monarch, maybe even a queen triumphing over chaos, all the better for her image.
So poets wrote about her, painters painted her.
Worshipped her in verse, immortalized her as this ageless goddess, Astrea returned. Explorers named colonies after her Virginia. England under her reign really started to believe it was the center of the universe.
And she encouraged that.
Absolutely fostered it. She backed explorers like Walter Raleigh, Francis Drake. Their voyages, part exploration, part piracy, fueled England's growing ambition on the world stage.
It really does sound like England was just buzzing with this creative, ambitious energy.
Yeah.
How much of that was directly down to her leadership?
It's hard to quantify precisely, but she was crucial. She didn't just let it happen. She actively curated her image, controlled the message. She surrounded herself with people, poets, playwrights, painters who made her reign look not just powerful, but inspired. She became this living myth, a potent symbol of England's ascendance.
Now, her court wasn't all politics and spies. There was personal drama too, right? Especially involving Robert Dudley.
Oh, yes. The source compares it to watching The Bachelor, except the stakes were national stability and the lead had absolute power.
Huh. And Dudley was the main contestant.
He was certainly the one closest to the queen. Emotionally, politically, maybe physically, their relationship fueled endless speculation for decades.
But she never gave a clear answer about him either, even after his wife died suspiciously.
Nope. Classic Elizabeth. Paraded Dudley at court, kept him close, but never too close. Never married him. Marrying Dudley, her childhood friend but from a controversial family, would likely have been political suicide internally.
So she just kept him and other suitors dangling.
Weaponized courtly love, really. Entertained suitors from all over Europe, smiled sweetly, accepted their flattering portraits, and then nothing. Radio silence.
The delaying decisions again, turning negotiation into an art form.
Exactly. Kept the political winds shifting in her favor. By staying single, staying technically available, she could play every side. Keep allies hopeful, enemies confused.
So her personal life, her love life, wasn't really personal at all.
It was a performance. A very calculated, slow, deliberate dance. Designed to keep everyone guessing, speculating, and far too busy doing that to notice how completely in control she actually was. Another tool in her political arsenal.
Okay, let's move towards the end of her reign. By the late 1590s, she's in her 60s. Remarkable for that time. Did she mellow with age?
Mellow. Not Elizabeth. If anything, age sharpened her. Courtiers apparently walked on eggshells even more than before. She was known to literally throw things, gloves, shoes, devastating insults during council meetings if she was displeased.
Wow. So still very much in charge.
Absolutely. Though she became more suspicious, perhaps more isolated, her public persona shifted even further from monarch to myth, England's Gloriana, a living relic almost.
But she never stopped ruling, never handed over the reins.
Never, right to the end, read every report, signed every letter, made every major decision, held on to power until her fingers basically couldn't grip anymore. What's so fascinating is how she defied aging itself in terms of her grip on power. What drove that relentless hold right to the very end?
It seems almost superhuman.
Well, her entire life was a fight, wasn't it? A battle for survival, for control, from being declared illegitimate to the tower to assassination plots. Surrender just wasn't in her nature. Even surrendering to death seemed like a defeat she wouldn't accept easily.
That story about her refusing to lie down at the very end.
Incredible, isn't it? Literally refused to go to bed for days, apparently believing that if she lay down, she'd never get up again. She aged loudly, the source says, like a royal hurricane with pearls and eyeliner, fragile in body maybe at the very end, but never ever in will.
So Elizabeth II died in 1603, after 44 years on the throne. A remarkable reign.
Incredible length of time. And even her death was on her own terms in a way, that refusal to lie down until she was finally carried to bed, passing quietly, never letting anyone see her vulnerable.
And the succession, after all those years of silence.
Well, she famously refused to name anyone for decades, but apparently when pressed one last time near the very end, she gestured towards James VI of Scotland.
Not exactly a trumpet fanfare.
No, not a dramatic proclamation, but in Elizabethan politics, that subtle nod might as well have been fireworks in a press release. It was enough.
So she died as she lived.
Alone, unbent, entirely on her own terms. Like the source says, a statue finally stepping off its pedestal.
And her legacy. What did she leave behind beyond just the throne?
Oh, so much more that throne. She left a blueprint, really, for how to be unforgettable, how to wield power in unexpected ways.
She proved a woman could rule effectively.
Not just effectively, brilliantly. Dominated politics, diplomacy, fashion, culture, war, all while being constantly, consistently underestimated by pretty much everyone.
And she transformed England in the process.
Hugely. From that chaotic, debt-ridden, religiously divided mess she inherited into a confident, culturally vibrant, internationally feared power. She navigated assassinations, religious strife, centuries of patriarchal baggage telling her just marry a man and behave.
She refused.
Yeah.
And thrived.
Absolutely refused and absolutely thrived. Her legacy isn't just the golden age or beating the Armada. It's that image she built, that narrative she controlled so precisely. It's lasted for centuries. Gloriana, the Virgin Queen, Estrella, half goddess, half monarch, fully in charge. Even in death, she controls the story.
Could she be ruthless? Manipulative?
Oh, undoubtedly. Manipulative, ruthless, emotionally distant. But the source makes a great point. Those weren't just flaws, they were part of the machinery. The myth, the success, it didn't work without the fiercely determined, sometimes difficult woman grinding the gears behind it.
She did it all without a king, without an heir, without backing down. She rewrote the rules. So thinking about it today, what are the enduring lessons we can take from her reign?
I think she remains so influential because she embodied this entirely new form of leadership. She proved that ingenuity, that strategic thinking, that fierce self-belief and determination could overcome almost any obstacle, societal, political, personal. She forged an empire and an unforgettable legacy entirely on her own terms.
It really is just a masterclass in resilience, isn't it?
Yeah.
And strategic brilliance. We've seen how she used those early vulnerabilities, how she perfected political image, how she just flat out refused to conform.
Especially around marriage and succession.
Right. And that unmatched ability to control the narrative, control her kingdom.
She really was a living testament to the power of inner strength and that calculated defiance, building an empire on sheer force of will.
So here's something to think about. How much of modern leadership, especially, maybe for women, but perhaps for anyone challenging the status quo, how much does it still draw on that Elizabethan playbook?
That blend of image control, strategic ambiguity, that willingness to just defy expectations.
Yes. What else can we learn from leaders who don't just play by the rules, but decide to rewrite them entirely?
It's worth considering how those principles, adapting, controlling the message, strategic silence, sometimes might resonate in your own life. Whether it's leadership or personal challenges, or just understanding those hidden levers of power all around us.
Lots to think about. Until next time, keep diving deep.